Playing through SSX 3 again just reminded me how much we need more games like this. We're missing these extreme sports games, these games that were just about pick up and play action, and you had all these cool unlockables and secrets to find. It was about repetition. It was about playing something over and over again because it was that good to get mastery of it. That's what this game is. It's a game that you could play forever, a game you'll never get bored of. Even if in the moment you want to put it down and play something else, you can always return to it because the gameplay just never ever gets old. And I want to share with you guys exactly why this game is so awesome. Unfortunately, because these games don't exist like that anymore, a lot of younger people, and maybe even some people who just started gaming recently, they never played SSX 3. Thankfully, it is on Xbox One through backwards compatibility, and there's always emulation. But either way, let's get into it. Let's talk about one of the best snowboarding games ever, SSX 3. The big star of this game, surprisingly, is actually its setting. It's the mountain. You play the game on 3 different peaks, each peak representing difficulty and the challenges you'll be facing. The first peak's gimmick is all about avalanches. It's not that many when you're doing certain events, but when you're in the backcountry, you'll be experiencing avalanches that could get in your way as you snowboard and try to do tricks. The second peak is a little bit more difficult. The racers will go faster, they will use more shortcuts, and they'll be overall a little bit more aggressive than on beginner. But the main gimmick that happens here is storms. As you race down the mountain, trees will fall, lightning will strike, and many different parts of the environment will react to the weather. And it'd be difficult to control your rider because of the weather and the high winds pushing you all over the place. The tracks actually get more crazier as you go along, as they become more difficult to navigate due to the crazy weather conditions. And Peak 3's main gimmick, also being the hardest, is all about the ground falling. It's all about navigating through these crevices that are created thanks to the horrible weather conditions while trying not to fall to your death. The most impressive thing about the mountain is the fact it's all loaded in at once. Yes, somehow EA managed to make this mountain render all at once back in the 6th generation. That means you're able to ride down the entire mountain from top to bottom without the game ever needing to load. This is where the dynamic weather gets very interesting, because in these backcountry races where the events are not organized, the weather conditions are more out of control. So you'll be seeing more destruction and more crazy environmental changes as you go down the mountain. But just imagine, you're experiencing all this in one big race. So it's not like you go through one section and go through the next. No, you get to experience from the top to bottom, the hardest difficulty down to the easiest, while trying to go for the best time or the highest trick score. This is where the game really shines and becomes very impressive. I know for me at the time, I was a kid, so I wasn't really sure about anything technical when it came to video games. So to me, this was just normal. Now that I'm older and I actually have a little bit of coding knowledge under my belt, I actually see how impressive this is. Even games today often have different ways to hide loading, whether it's walking through a slim corridor or going through a long elevator ride. But SSX 3 again renders its entire mountain all at once. So you're allowed to be able to ride down the whole thing without ever having any loading, interruptions, or weird situations like in Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, riding down weird corridors with nothing in them. Now, with this being an arcade snowboarding game, the controls are very simple to understand. However, mastering the gameplay and its different mechanics is where it truly shines for anyone that wants something deeper. First, you have your grab tricks. There are many different types of grab tricks you can do, but the cool thing about each one is that they're able to be modified. You can tweak each grab you do, allowing them to come out faster while also building up more meter and more points. You can also do spins and flips. Now, the cool thing about spins and flips is that you can actually set them up before you actually jump off a ramp. So you can hold the D-pad any direction you want to. So your rider is already set to go to spin to the left, to the right, do a backflip, front flip, or anything in between. You can also change this direction in midair, but obviously if you change in the opposite direction that you were going without flowing in the right momentum, then the rider will kind of stop, or they will actually slow down the speed of the turn. This spin and flip mechanic actually goes a little bit deeper than just helping you build up high score. There are plenty of times in midair you actually might need to adjust your rider so that you don't crash into something. Or maybe you want to turn just ever so slightly so you can catch a grind that you actually wouldn't catch if you were just facing forward. So you might want to turn the rider using the flip tricks or the spin tricks so that you can get in a good position. Now, one set of moves that I think a lot of people don't really use, especially if they play casually, are the hand plants. As at first you might say, well, why would I need the hand plant as a snowboarder? But there's actually one event that I'll go over that actually utilizes hand plants very well, as you need them to get to other places on the track. But hand plants can also be used to set yourself up for a grind. See, in SSX it's kind of difficult sometimes to line up with a grind, especially because you're flying down the mountain so fast. So by doing a hand plant on a rail, you're already on the rail, and then you can flip out and land directly on it and use turbo to push yourself forward. Speaking of turbo, everything you do from tricks to flips will build up your turbo meter as you go down the mountain. You also have board presses, which are basically manuals in this game. Now you could do these on a rail or you could do these straight off the ground. These actually allow you to extend your combo, and you will definitely need to do this for higher trick events as you go along in the game. And last but not least, if you want to play a little bit dirty, you can actually punch a rider off their board. You actually can block too, so just in case a rider wants to knock you off, you will be safe. But it's nothing more satisfying than starting a race and just punching a dude directly in the head. Now, as you do tricks, you build up the Uber meter. Once you get to Uber level 1, you're able to do Uber tricks. Uber tricks are very unrealistic moves that your snowboarder can pull off. You could do things like kick flips, flying through the air like Superman, and just spinning the board around your neck like it's a guillotine. There are 3 different tiers of Uber that you can go through. In Uber level 1, the different tricks you could do are kind of tame compared to the ones that you could do later. But these tricks can actually be landed out pretty quickly compared to the second level Uber. There's actually a trick to building up Uber level 2 pretty quickly thanks to Uber level 1. As I said before, the tricks come out pretty fast on Uber level 1, so you can actually, if you get enough air, do all 4 tricks to build up your Uber meter. Once in Uber level 2, you're able to do longer and more impressive tricks. These tricks may be cooler and even give you more rewards and points, but they actually take so long that you need enough air to pull them off. At any point, if you crash during Uber level 1 or 2, you will lose your Uber meter until you build your turbo back up. Once you spell the word super by doing enough tricks, you'll be in Super Uber level 3. In Uber 3, nothing changes with the tricks, but you do have infinite turbo. This doesn't last forever, but this is very helpful during races, as having infinite turbo allows you to speed down the track quicker. Plus, in this mode, if you do crash or bail, you don't lose your Uber at all. So you can still have the infinite turbo even if you have to reset or if you crash into a mountain or fall off the cliff. Another cool part about Uber 3 is that once it finally runs out, it resets you back to Uber 2, which means you can build up super again quick enough and you can get right back to having infinite turbo. Maintaining Uber level 1 or 2 is all about doing tricks. So even if you don't have enough time to pull off a Uber trick, as long as you do enough regular tricks to keep your meter full, then the clock will never run out. But you'll never achieve Uber 3 until you finally do enough tricks to get there. So you don't want to sit there and waste time just doing regular tricks. Anytime you have opportunity to do an Uber move, do it. Now the main game mode that you'll be spending most time in is Conquer the Mountain. There is no story, but each rider does have a different rival in each peak of the mountain. The point of this mode is to be number 1 in each race event and each trick event. There are a few different styles of trick events, but only one race event. Each race event is carefully crafted, perfectly matching each peak's difficulty. While racing, it's all about getting down the mountain as fast as you can. Each racetrack will have a lot of ramps and a lot of times to get big air, but please don't make this your focus. That's actually one of my biggest mistakes, as the AI in the beginning is very simple to beat. So in the beginning, you can jump off the different ramps and do different tricks and just go all out if you want to. But as you go up the mountain, it's all about speed, which means you need to find and practice going through shortcuts and eliminating time in the air, because as much time as you spend in the air building up your Uber meter, the slower you are to come back down. Spending too much time in the air could be the difference between first place and third place. So you want to keep your eye out for shortcuts. An easy trick is to actually look at the AI. Not all of them will use shortcuts, but if you pay close attention, you will see many of them use them, even some that aren't so obvious. Now, the easiest shortcuts to find are the out of bounds areas, as they have big glass windows letting you know exactly where they are. But there are also other types of shortcuts too, going slightly off track, or you might even see these purple flares that indicate that if you take this route, it'll be faster than another. Sometimes even going off of a cliff can lead you to a shortcut that you would not even know was even there to begin with. When it comes to just getting gold, these shortcuts are very useful to make sure that you're dominant in races. But if you want to get a platinum trophy, it's best to use all shortcuts and eliminate all time in the air. You want to still build up your Uber meter so you can get infinite turbo boost, but you want to stay on flat ground and on a speedy track down to the finish line, and not so much in the air or goofing around doing other types of tricks or even messing with the racers. Now for the trick events, you have 3 different types. Slope style is kind of like the race events, sort of. These are fully customized tracks, different from the race tracks, where they're all designed for you to get big air and to do a bunch of different tricks in combination. There are tons of pickups around the map too, different power-ups that actually give your rider different combo boosters and different other rewards as you go along the track. Most of these are high in the sky, so the game kind of encourages you to get enough air to do combos while also collecting these things in mid-combo. This actually could be very difficult to pull off, and it shouldn't be something you worry about too much, as if you get very good at mastering the trick system, you only need a couple of these to get high score, but the more you get, the better it will be for you in the end. This is where manuals come into play. Doing a manual will extend your combo. Unlike Tony Hawk, manuals aren't that hard to pull off. There isn't a meter that you have to worry for or anything like that. You just need to pay attention to your rider and see how their animations are going. If they begin to squirm too much, they're about to fall. Good thing is, if you let go of a manual, you still have enough time to start up a new one so that you won't fall and that you can still keep going with your combo. You want to hold a manual until you can find a new ramp to go off of and do bigger tricks in the air, or you want to hold a manual to find a railing so that you can grind on it. You can also do multiple manuals in one go so that you can build up your score multiplier quicker. Now the big air event is also a trick event, except this is all about going off one big giant ramp. This is a very short event that requires you to know exactly what you're doing with your tricks and how to use different combinations of tricks in the sky so that you could get a high score in one go without relying on too many different combo strings. This event at first didn't seem very impressive to me or even interesting, but as you keep going, these tracks become very interesting. You would think you'll be doing the best combo possible and still can't get gold. This is where that repetition comes in, as you will become addicted to wanting to figure out what is the perfect combination of moves you could do in a short period of time to get the gold record. I can't even imagine what I would need to do to get the platinum. Now Super Pipe is all about tricks and nothing else. Slope style was about tricks, but it still had a race element to it, as you had to go down a track in order to do the different tricks. Slope style, you're inside of half quarter pipes and you're doing nothing but tricks in rapid succession. There's actually enough room between each pipe that you don't even have to do manuals to carry your combo over. The trick here is that it's not enough room to build up speed, so you want to build up speed by doing enough tricks in the air and landing properly, as at any moment if you kill your momentum, you can't go up the pipes anymore. Hand plants become very useful here, as some courses actually have pipes high in the sky, and if you do a hand plant, you're able to reach them. One thing that's kind of interesting about this mode is the fact that you're constantly being edged towards the finish line. See, at any moment you can actually end your run when you have enough tricks built up. But I swear, it doesn't matter how many times I played this mode over the years. It feels like the game is purposely pushing me towards the finish line. You can actually find yourself in a hypnotic rhythm of doing trick after trick after trick, not realizing you're edging yourself to the finish line and you don't have enough to get the gold medal yet. So you want to pay very close attention to make sure you're not edging yourself towards the finish line. In these events, this is where monster tricks come in real handy. Now, what are monster tricks? Well, basically those are uber tricks with special conditions being made. So for example, you could do a Superman with 3 backflips, and that's a monster trick. These tricks are unlocked as you complete different highlights throughout your career. They take a lot to pull off, but they reward you with high score every single time. Since we're talking about trick events, one thing I have to mention is how the trick system works. So not only do you have time in between tricks to build up a combo, but you also have trick repetition. If you keep doing the same trick back to back to back, you'll get less score each time. This isn't that big of a deal, as you could just do one trick in between a monster trick so that you can always keep doing monster tricks over and over. This applies to any type of move, but when it comes to monster tricks, this is something you want to do. Now the last events are the peak races and the peak trick events. In the rival peak race, you race against your rival down the peak in the backcountry. Now, unlike normal race events, this isn't a organized race. You're racing basically outside of bounds of the SSX event. So you'll be dealing with worse weather conditions and also a wider area to race in. These races can get really hectic as the different weather effects can actually get really crazy here. Racing your rival while also having to dodge an avalanche is pretty difficult. Or dealing with horrible snowstorms to the point that you can barely even see where you're going. The rival trick event is the same thing, except you'll be going for high score. Then lastly, you have kind of like a time trial type thing. So you are competing against your fellow rival, but they're not actually there with you this time. You compete to beat their high score or their fastest time down the peak, with the end game being racing down or tricking down the entire mountain in one go, going for the highest score, the longest event in the game. There are also these things called big challenges. When in free ride, you're able to go down each different track or even the backcountry and find these different events to partake in. It could be something simple as go through each goal, do a flip through each hoop, do a certain trick, or get a certain high score on a racetrack. It's important to remember to not only replay these, but replay all events. As you beat certain big challenges, you actually unlock harder versions of them, each one giving you greater rewards. Main events also do this as well. Main events also give you different rewards depending upon what ranking you got in each event. This level of replay value is surely missed in this day and age of gaming. Every event, even from the beginning, it's fun. So even after reaching the highest difficulty and enjoying that level of challenge, you still would want to come back to lower difficulty settings just so you can experience these well-crafted tracks and events. Speaking of rewards, for every event you get a cash payout. Coming in first, second, or third will give you a different payout each time. And if you manage to get the platinum ranking, you'll get the highest reward of all. But that's not required to beat the event. You can use this cash to unlock different moves, clothing, and other items in the item shop. From posters to artwork to even figurines, there's plenty of collectibles to get, even cheat characters. Now these cheat characters don't actually give you any special abilities, but they're typically older characters from other SSX games or even some characters from different games such as Stretch from NBA Street. The different moves you can unlock are for your special Uber tricks. Now personally, I don't actually switch the characters' Uber moves out. Only because as I play through the game, about time I earn enough cash to do so, I actually become so used to the character's preset moves that changing them makes the character feel completely different, as I've grown accustomed to the timing of each trick I already had. You can even use cash to level up your rider. Now this also changes how the rider feels, as you'll be able to do tricks faster or even race faster. You would think this would make the game unbalanced and make challenges easier to beat, but the game keeps up with your leveled up character. So even as you get more stats, you still have a challenging experience. Speaking of the AI, this game's AI is absolutely phenomenal. Somehow EA created a game that wasn't too challenging and not too easy at the same time. That perfect balance where you're going to want to keep playing because the game is challenging, but you're also not going to be bored because it's too easy. It almost feels like you're playing against real people. Like I said, the AI will use shortcuts and even knock you down from time to time, but they don't do this in an annoying way. Another thing EA did that was great is that this game has no rubber banding. If you don't know what rubber banding is, that's a common practice used in racing games. Basically, to simulate that the race is challenging or that it's a fair race, the AI will artificially catch up to you. So the AI will actually move at a speed that you can't possibly move at, so they can catch up to you in a race, so the race feels more competitive. Or what they'll do is slow down if they're too far ahead of you so you can catch up, making the game easier. This is not in SSX 3 at all. So if you're extremely ahead of the competition based upon your skills alone, they will not be able to catch up unless you deliberately just stop moving. However, if they get so far ahead of you, they're not going to slow down. So that does mean a race could be lost, and it's probably best to just reset the race. Now today, with so many games having hand-holdy type mechanics built into them, this might seem frustrating to people that's not used to this type of racing. But I also think it could be a breath of fresh air for anyone who's never experienced it. As for me, I miss this type of stuff in racing games, and I wish it would return, or at least be an option. We've all been playing a racing game, and due to our skills, we feel like there's no way the AI should be able to catch up to us. I don't feel it makes the game feel any more intense that I'm so good that the AI needs to cheat to catch up to me. Because most of the time, you can actually tell that the AI is cheating. In some games, it's so bad, you can actually tell that the AI just teleported next to you so they could catch up. And for me, it's nothing more patronizing than a character actually purposely slowing down so that I could catch up to win. If I was very frustrated, which shouldn't be good anyway when you're playing a game, then maybe it's not that big of a deal. But if I'm actually having a fun, fair experience, I actually enjoy the fact in SSX 3 that if the AI is just better than me, then I just lose. Because the game isn't made unfair in either direction, I know that if I just get better at what I'm doing, I'll win. Which again ties back into that fun, arcade, repetitive feeling that you get from playing these types of games. Today, for many people, they see no purpose in playing against the AI. I've seriously heard people say, what's the point of being competitive in a single player game? What's the point of being competitive when you're playing against the AI? I understand that a lot of these gamers just started gaming recently, or they only been gaming in the era where online gaming was available. So to them, they feel like playing against the AI is really a waste of time, and if you want real competition, you need to play against a real person. They didn't grow up in the era of arcades where the arcade machine was cheating, or they didn't even grow up in the era where actually most people played fighting games only in person. So that means fighters, racers, and any game that you would consider competitive today, the most of the practice you got was actually with the AI. Which means developers actually had to make a smart AI that wasn't completely unfair so that you can actually get a feeling that you were playing a real person. You would be surprised how many people actually got good at games by just playing against the AI, if not better than playing a real person half the time. As much as technology has advanced, it's actually very impressive and actually kind of funny playing this old 6th generation game today and realizing that EA Big somehow cracked a code that can't be cracked today. Or maybe it's just that times have changed and now it's all about pushing people to online play. Either way, I enjoyed this AI system. I enjoyed the challenge this game provided, and I think more games should look into making sure that the single player experience is a fun, fair, challenging experience and not just pushing people to play online all day to get some type of competitive edge. Another thing that's important to bring up in this game is its physics and its hitboxes. See, each character has a very precise hitbox and each character actually has a different height. Not only that, they took in consideration each character's weight. That means big bulky characters like Simon actually fly down the mountain a little bit faster because he's a bit heavier, but at the same time he's harder to control. Even with maxed out stats, he doesn't feel as loose and nimble as say Kiori. And characters like Griff are actually super short, which means it's kind of easier to sneak through cracks and crevices of the different tracks so that you can hit shortcuts easier. But then again, don't get it twisted. Characters like Simon are actually better at getting collectibles. Due to his hitbox being bigger and his character model being taller, he's actually able to reach and connect with different collectibles and pickups easier than a smaller character. Meaning you don't have to be as precise with him when you actually touch them. This gives every rider a different feel. So even if you were to max out each character's stats, they still feel differently. Even if you gave them all the same types of moves, they're still going to perform them the same as the animations are the same, but the feel of the rider is different. Now let's go over a big aspect of this game, and that's its attitude and its characters. Each character in this game has a different personality. Mac is a hip hop inspired b-boy type character. Elise is more the supermodel type. And Simon is just well, he's crazy, I guess. Each character's super move actually matches their personality. Not only that, each rider actually speaks as you ride down the mountain. Kiori, being Japanese, practically only speaks Japanese as she rides down the mountain, whereas Elise's big ego shines bright as she rides down as she taunts different players. They made sure to give each character different dialogue depending upon who they're around. So for example, if you're riding as Simon and you happen to ride by a particular racer and do a trick in front of them, Simon might actually say something directly to that rider, or they might say something back to him. If you knock a character down, you can actually hear them being very angry with you and even come back to want to hit you. This may seem like a minor detail, but this type of thing is missing in games today. That personality, that pizzazz, that icing on the cake, if you will. It's actually fun just turning the music down and listen to the riders banter to each other as they go down the mountain. Speaking of the characters, each of them have a different bio. Give you background information for each character. This extra bit of lore ties into the overall feel of the game and actually lets you get to know the rider better. So these don't just feel like blanket characters that you're playing, they actually feel like real people. And thanks to these bios, it explains why sometimes when you're racing down the mountain, some characters are friendlier to others where I actually hate other characters. One thing that's cool about the character's personality is how they represent them through character customization. As you play the game, each character can unlock different costumes and you can even buy new costumes. I spoke about this earlier in the Unlockables, but I want to talk about this a little bit more here. As there are items that you could buy for each character that are generic items that anyone can have. But there are special items that you can only unlock or buy for each individual character, representing their different personalities. For example, Kiori is kind of a naive, happy-going character. Unlike Elise, who's more aggressive and she's more of a sexualized character. So Elise being more of the sexual type, she's gonna have more items that are more risque, whereas Kiori doesn't dress that way. I know today many people may find it kind of stupid. Why is a woman snowboarding down a mountain in a bikini? But again, this goes to her character and her personality. And again, this is an unrealistic snowboarding game. But the fact that they still kept each character true to who they are is why I'm pointing this out. See, as much as we could say that this doesn't make any sense to do, well, we could say the whole game doesn't make any sense. You can't ride down a mountain snowboarding at breakneck speed with nothing to protect you. And you also can't go 50 to 100 feet in the air doing crazy tricks and even getting off your snowboard. And no one will question it. But they'll question why Elise is half naked riding down the mountain. Again, the game is about having fun and being stylish. So to me and people who grew up in my time and era, this is pretty normal and this doesn't bother anybody. But I'm only addressing it because I know what people think about games today. Whether you're on the side that this stuff shouldn't be in games or not, it's not really why I'm here. I just want to point out the differences in between different generations of gamers. For me, I enjoy this type of content. I enjoy the fact that they made Simon a crazy character and his costumes reflect that. I enjoy that Elise is supposed to be a supermodel type and she dresses like, well, a supermodel. And I enjoy the fact that Griff is a kid and everything that he does is kid-like. He even wears 3D glasses. I guess my overall message here is that this type of creativity is kind of lost. As people have become so sensitive today, characters cannot even be expressive or be different from one another. And if they are different, the differences have to be approved by the board of political correctness, which basically means Twitter. Now on to the music. The soundtrack has a mixture of many different types of sounds, but overall everything kind of has a techno feel to it. There are a few tracks that don't, but most of them still line up in that techno funk era. There is rap and hip hop, but it's alternative rap and hip hop, such as the Black Eyed Peas or Nerd. The cool thing about the soundtrack is actually its DJ. The DJ not only will commentate on everything happening on the mountain, but he'll even give kind of a backstory for things that you don't see. Kind of reminds me of the radio broadcast in GTA after a certain major event happens, except here it happens all the time. Then each track also has a dynamic angle to it. What I mean by that is EA somehow managed to break up the track depending upon what you're doing. So for example, if you're riding on flat ground, the music will play as normal. But as soon as you go high in the sky, the soundtrack kind of cuts to a different version of the record. Maybe you don't hear the lyrics anymore, but you just hear the beat. Or if you're underground somewhere, it'll do something similar where it sounds like you're in an echoing environment and the sound kind of reflects that. Again, this is that icing on the cake that a lot of games are missing. That small attention to detail or flavor that is just missing nowadays. SSX 3 has to be the greatest snowboarding game I've ever played. I remember when I first bought the game too. I was probably 9 or 8 years old, and I just got done working with my father. We went to Toys R Us, if you remember what that is, and I saw it sitting on the shelf. I remember my friend playing a game called SSX Tricky, so when I saw SSX 3, I felt that this must have been the sequel. I picked the game up, and unfortunately, I couldn't immediately go home as we had to go to a family event. But as soon as I got home, I popped the game in my GameCube, and I had a great time ever since. As I've gotten older, I revisited the game thanks to Xbox One's backwards compatibility, and I've only enjoyed it even more. SSX 3 is 20 years old, and for it to be still the best snowboarding game on the market is crazy. I know Ubisoft and some other developers are making snowboarding games here or there, but it's pretty sad that we don't get games like this anymore. SSX did come back on Xbox 360, and maybe one day I'll go over that game. But I'll just warn you, it's not as good as this. This game hit all the marks. It really doesn't have any cons that I can think of. Sure, some textures don't look that great and we can nitpick here or there, but for a game that came out 20 years ago, running at 60 frames per second, playing as well as it does, and even now you can play it now on your Xbox One with slightly enhanced visuals, it's no reason not to pick this game up. It's one of my favorite games, and I hope one day you get the chance to play it too, and it become one of your favorite games too.